WLMB in Focus is brought to you by the generous donors of WLMB-TV 40. We are grateful for every gift that helps support this show's ministry.
Your values are only going to be reflected and represented when you elect people that believe like you do. And I'm a Christian. I'm a proud Christian. I don't run from that. We need to stand up for traditional values the majority of us believe on, and you're going to be represented by who you elect. So they have to stay involved.
Thank you for joining us on WLMB in Focus. My name is Aaron Darr.
And I'm Virginia Bosse. And Aaron, the excitement is in the air as we have Derek Merrin, who's running for a seat in the House of Representatives for the 9th District. And you know, primaries are coming up May 5th. And so we want to encourage people to get out and vote.
Absolutely. You know, and speaking of the Merrin family, they do have a pretty good legacy here at WLMB. The late pastor Russ Merrin, who's now with the Lord, he started at WLMB with Pastor's Point many years ago. They've since done, National Day of Prayer events with us. Then Up Front was an award-winning show that we produced for them, for their church. Did that for a number of years, and we're just so thankful to have that heritage in this community from the Merrin family. So that's really cool. But we're excited to hear from Derek today.
Yes, and another thing that we're excited about is to update people on the Share-a-thon, because people are out there saying, hey, I know you guys didn't quite meet your goal. What are you going to do?
Well, we had a $300,000 goal. We hit $170,000 at midnight on
it's a very exciting
April
moment.
14th. Yes, very exciting moment. We had a donor give us $665 right at the end with the matching. They figured it out to get us to that even 170, so that was a little fun moment there. But we just had a great time. There's so many people on the phones, answering some calls, that a lot of ministry calls going on, some really serious prayer needs. So that was a special time, and maybe you could speak a little to that.
Well, there was somebody that called in, that kind of was like, hey, why aren't my favorite shows on? But we had a prayer force volunteer then that, kind of talked with this person and then ended up leading them to the Lord. So what a great moment. That's what this ministry is all about. Yeah,
God uses all things to reach all people, and we're so happy about that. Now, I do want to say, though, we are still, we hit almost 57% of our goal, right? But that $130,000 shortfall is a real need that we do need to overcome. So you're going to see our next newsletter is going to be making some announcements about some things we're doing. And maybe you could kick them off and let the cat out of the bag. What's the surprise?
Okay, so coming up in June, we are going to have a special one-day Share-a-thon, Celebrate America Share-a-thon. That's Tuesday, June 16th from 1 to 11 p.m. And Aaron, it's a free ice cream social.
Yes, free that's pretty good. That's a pretty good word.
Yeah, so we want to encourage people to come out that day between 3 and 7 p.m., have some ice cream with us. They can even, stop in the studio while we're doing the Share-a-thon and kind of check things out.
Yeah, it'd be a nice meet and greet opportunity. And one of the fun things we're doing with it as well, we've been kind of getting known for doing these nightly drawings, right? Well, we're going to have one again. This is from the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum. We're partnering with them again to bring you a grand prize giveaway. So that night we're going to be drawing for people to go to the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum, which is a great place just a little south of Cincinnati there in Kentucky. Great destination. If you haven't been there before, you're definitely going to want to check it out. So you want to get entered.
Yes. And so how can people get entered, Aaron?
Well, they need to, give us a call on the day of the Share-a-thon and say, hey, I would like to be entered. We'll probably do some type of code word. We'll figure out the details of that. But one easy way for people to get entered right now to guarantee 2 entries into that is to help us with our matching fund, because we do want to have a matching fund going into this summer celebration Share-a-thon. And so people can give right now at WLMB.com to match dollar for dollar when we go live.
Well, wonderful. All right, so stay tuned for the Share-a-thon coming up on June 16th. And but you know what? We're going to talk with Derek Merrin in just a moment. But first, let's go on over to Lydia Williams with the Community Connection.
My name is Lydia Williams, and welcome to this week's Community Connection, sponsored by El Tipico. Calvary Church has 2 events coming up this week. Their 419 Serve Day will take place on April 25th. They'll be serving at the Toledo Gospel Rescue Mission and helping spruce up their properties for spring. The rescue mission shows God's love to those in need through shelter, food, and support for those experiencing homelessness and poverty. The church will be serving from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And Calvary's Family Night at the Ribbon is April 27th from 6:30 to 8:30. You can bring your own skates or rent them there and enjoy a night of family fun. You can sign up for both of these events at toledocalvary.org. And looking ahead, Genesis Village has 2 summer events coming up. Their free health fair is on May 19th from 9 to 11 a.m. and will feature a variety of free services and resources, including health screenings and resources from local organizations, including the Alzheimer's Association and more. And the Genesis Village Car Show will be taking place on June 10th. They'll have around 100 cars to see, as well as music, giveaways, food, and more. The event will be at Genesis Village from 6 to 8 p.m. You can find the details for these events and more on our website, and if you have an event you'd like us to feature, let us know using the form on that page. Thanks for joining me for this week's Community Connection.
Well, we're excited. We are back with Derek Merrin, who is running for a seat in the House of Representatives in the 9th District. He was a former state representative from Lucas County who served for 8 years in the Ohio legislature. So we want to welcome you, Derek Merrin. It is just an honor and pleasure to have you here. And maybe we could start off just sharing a little bit about yourself.
Well, Virginia, Aaron, I'm big fans. Thanks for having me on. I definitely appreciate it. I'm running for Congress again to unseat Marcy Kaptur, who has really felled our region for over 43 years.
Wow.
And I believe we need new leadership, and I'm excited to hopefully go to Washington and fight for our conservative values.
All right, sounds good. So let's start with just a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit of that political background and where you've been.
Sure. Well, I grew up really in Northwest Ohio, spent the last 3 decades of my life here. My family lived in Toledo, and then we moved to Waterville, and I got started in public service at a young age. I ran for Waterville City Council when I was 19 and was fortunately able to win and became mayor a couple years later. And, I ran on a platform of fiscal responsibility, transparency, and trying to do what's best with the people and really kind of taking on the establishment. And that's kind of what my career has been about, is taking on the establishment. It's not always just the simple as the blue jerseys against the red jerseys. We need true conservatives that look for solutions to real life problems. So I spent 8 years in the state legislature, had the opportunity to change over 20 laws to make people's lives better, and want to take the fight to Washington. I believe America is really the greatest country in the history of the world, but freedom is not free, and we have a lot of people that have served overseas fighting for our country, but we need people also here to serve and to fight for what is right.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're here at WLMB, Christian TV station, and so, definitely want to hit on, how has your faith, impacted your values and your career?
That's a great question, Virginia. I'm a born-again believer in Jesus Christ. I accepted Jesus Christ at a young age, and I had the honor and privilege of growing up in a Christian home. And my father was a pastor, so I was in the ministry really all my life, seeing up close and personal. My parents served the Lord, and I'm a huge believer in Christian education. My parents started Montclover Christian Academy, and we need more Christians in public service. We've seen over the last few decades in our nation, families fall apart, and a lot of people fall away from God, and we need to follow biblical principles. And I'm honored to serve God in the public capacity of government, and I think we need to continue to move forward and honor, as a nation, honor the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I would like to go back a little bit. You talked about the 20 different things that you helped get into place. I would like to know, what do you feel are some of your biggest accomplishments?
Sure. I repealed the sales tax off of prescription eyewear. So that's the sales tax off of the frames, lenses, contacts. That's over $50-60 million a year.
Wow.
Now when you go to get your driver's license, you can get an 8-year driver's license instead of a 4-year driver's license.
I did too.
I also rewrote all the ballot language for levies and bond issues, so you know exactly how much a levy is going to cost.
Right.
Made it more easier for for victims of theft to get restitution. So just a whole range of things. I was a conservative leader on lowering the income tax, expanding school choice, making sure men didn't play in women's sports, and protecting minors from transitioning surgeries that are permanent. But I tried to look for smaller things that I knew I could win on to make a difference in the lives of people. It's not always about the the Republicans versus Democrats. I'm a proud Republican, but you have to look to say, how can we be practical? How can we make life better for people in Northwest Ohio? And that's what I hope to do in Congress is look for key things to help to uplift our area up, whether it's helping with making Toledo Express Airport better or helping the University of Toledo. We got real issues here locally that I want to help solve and get behind and help move forward.
Yeah.
Well, that all sounds great. What separates you from the other candidates that are running for the 9th District?
Sure. Well, in the Republican primary, I would say I have the most experience. I'm the most conservative, and I have a proven record of getting things done. We came closer to defeating Marcy Kaptur than anyone has ever done before in over 40 years. We were less than 1% away from winning. We had a libertarian backed by the Democrats that siphoned off about 4% of the vote and really, cost us the race. So we're going to build upon our successes that we had, or the momentum that we had. We have a lot of volunteers. We have more donors. We're going to have more money and resources to help us defeat Marcy Kaptur this time, and we're in the best position to do that.
Yeah, I would like to come around to, there's so many things you could choose right now to talk about that's going on. But what do you think are the most important issues right now facing Ohioans? Well,
my number one issue right now is focusing on the pocketbooks of Northwest Ohioans. We need a prosperous economy. We need more jobs. We need higher wages. And we need to push down the cost of consumer goods. It's gotten way too expensive to go out to eat. And you do that several things. One is, you unleash America's energy to get energy prices down. You eliminate a lot of federal mandates. The federal government's gotten way too big. We need it to be the size to fit back into the Constitution, where it's part of its proper role. So we also need to continue pressing forward and securing our borders and deporting people, criminal illegal immigrants that have no business being here. We need to put Americans first. And that's where I think a lot of people's frustration is that we have people flooding into our country that shouldn't be here, and we have our own problems. We have a $39 trillion deficit that we need to focus on. We need to focus on lowering, our prescription drug costs and not having to pay for everyone's around the world. We need to focus on America, Northwest Ohio, and as the next congressman for this area, that's exactly what I plan to do.
Oh, well, awesome. Well, there are a lot of issues facing Ohioans these days, but what are you really passionate about? What do you want to see change for Ohio?
Well, we talked about the fiscal conservative issues. I have the record of being pro-life in the legislature, standing up for family values, such as keeping, men from playing women's sports. Also co-sponsored a bill to make sure men can't go into women's restrooms. It's that type of stuff where the radical left has really pushed way too far into our lives and has crossed the lines in a lot of areas. And we need strong leaders at the federal level to say, enough's enough. We solved the issue of men playing women's sports in Ohio, but we still have the issues in New York and California. And this is Virginia, this is a 90-10 issue. Okay, 90% of Americans are completely against this, radical left nonsense. And we have to win on these issues. We got to protect women. We got to, speak the truth that there's only two genders. You can't change, you can't change your gender. We need to protect children. And there's a lot of issues like that where we have to stand strong on basic family values that I know your viewers at home agree with us on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, when you take a look at the 9th Congressional District, you get that. You definitely get that Northwest Ohio corner all the way across. You get a lot of the lake in there. It's a pretty big, it's a long district. There's a lot of industry in there, but that whole Northwest Ohio section is covered. You've got a lot of farmland. You also have the lake and industry along that. There's also an international border along there. How do you think immigration is impacting our local area?
Well, I think President Trump has done a nice job of securing the southern border. Some people forget about the northern border, right. And we've made progress there, but that needs to be secure. Northwest Ohio is a diverse area. We got a lot of different industries, from manufacturing to agriculture, but I really don't think our area has fully reached its potential. Do you know in 1949, The median household income in Lucas County was the 5th highest in the nation.
Wow.
The 5th highest, wealthiest in the nation. Unfortunately, today, Lucas County is below the national average by about almost 24%. So, Lucas County is struggling, and I want wealth brought into this area. I want more capital investment brought into this area. I want people to have more discretionary income, because more discretionary income, Virginia, it increases people's quality of life, and they have more freedoms to spend on their children, to go on vacation, to live a better life. So I want more money put into the pocketbooks of Northwest Ohioans. That's what I want. I want us to have more prosperous economy, and you do that by having a more friendly business environment. You do it by lower taxes, fewer regulations, and having better local governments on the ground, pushing in the right direction.
Is that one of the big obstacles right now? Is the government regulation to making Toledo really thrive, and the whole 9th Congressional District?
Well, I think the federal government has gotten way too big and has really intruded in a lot of areas. We have the Democrats in the city of Toledo and Lucas County government that really have a stranglehold. And they may have good intentions, but I don't think they have performed very well. And there's a lot of good local government officials in our area that are conservative, but they need a partner at the federal level to come and help them be, help to be a voice. There's specific industries and businesses and projects that need to be done and addressed in Northwest Ohio in a conservative way. And we need a fighter. We need a fighter for people. Our country is at a tipping point in many ways, from the federal deficit to how big the government is going to be, and we need someone that, like myself, who has a proven record, that is going to fight to defend our Constitution, our conservative values, and really stand up for our region. I've spent 3 decades here. I love our area, and we can do better.
All right. So speaking of businesses, so what about like the data centers that are coming into the area? I know people's emotions are all over the place on that.
Yeah, the data centers is a hot topic. Primarily that's a local issue that is going to be handled by the local officials. I think it's very important that the citizens that are going to their township meetings or city council continue to be very watchful. So when a deal is struck, that it needs to be in the best interest of the community, economically, environmentally, socially. And that's why you have zoning laws to make sure if these centers are going to come in, that they're located at the appropriate place. And different communities have different boundaries and desires, and most of those are going to be handled at the local level.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to talk a little bit. I know this might be a hot topic because Iran is definitely a big topic right now, and how that impacts the local economy. Maybe speak to that a little bit about what are some things you see happening that you would like to maybe help change?
Well, the Iran issue, is a complicated issue. I trust President Trump's judgment, in foreign affairs. I think he's done a good job. He has more intelligence on that issue than I do. Right. I really hope the issue with Iran gets resolved very quickly. Yeah. I certainly don't want to see, boots on the grounds and, people from our area, over there. I think we need to focus on our own country. But I really hope that, Iran never gets a nuclear weapon.
Right.
I really hope that they, stop sponsoring terrorism around the world, that regime. And I hope the, over 90 million people in Iran, have an opportunity for new leadership and have the opportunity for better lives and freedom. And we'll see how it turns out, but I really hope it resolves quickly.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to go back just a little bit to something you talked about with the transgender issue. And we know the Bible defines that there's one man, one woman, 2 sexes. Maybe speak a little bit more about that subject.
Well, I think it comes from, being raised in a Christian home with parents and just having common sense. We need to do better with adoption. That's another way we can, have better family values. And I think we have worked on that in the legislature to make it easier for parents to adopt. We need families to stay together. And I think that's, very, very important. But on those issues of, men and women's sports, going into the restroom, trying to stop some of the radical ideology being taught in our schools, I think is very, very important also. Mm.
So what do you hope to, accomplish should you win that seat in the 9th District?
Well, I want to put Northwest Ohio first. I want to have a prosperous economy. I want to do everything I can to help balance the budget finally in Washington and get our debt under control. I want to see economic growth. I want to see America's energy unleashed and help to lower prices and create jobs. And I'm going to be a fighter, Virginia, for Northwest Ohio and Toledo and all the way down to Putnam County and Paulding and Williams, where they can look to someone and say, hey, we got someone that believes like us, that holds our values, that's fighting for us, and not on the social issues, but also on the financial issues, and helping put more money in our pocketbooks, and defending our families, defending our girls, and that's exactly what I plan to do.
Yeah. Now I want to go back to the kind of the healthcare, because you've done some things locally, like you talked about getting the sales tax off for vision. That's pretty impressive. That's good. But what would you like to see on a national scale? Maybe talk a little bit about the healthcare. I don't know if it's the word crisis at this point, but kind of. It's convoluted.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a crisis. Prices are completely out of control, and I feel like both parties in some way have given up on lowering the prices. We need to make sure that you can purchase health insurance plans across state lines. You should have more flexibility and more plan options, which will give people more freedom. We need to increase access to health savings account, where you can get your own money in your account and be able to spend it the way you want to spend it. We need price transparency. Listen, we're all going to these doctors' offices and hospitals. We have no idea how much anything costs, so we can't make any type of decision on what we need because we don't know what the costs are. Okay, so there's been a big battle at the state level and the federally to try to force transparency. We've got to take on, I call them like the PBM cartels. We got all these middlemen and these pharmacy benefit managers that are driving up the cost of prescription drugs. We don't know what the cost of those are, and it's very frustrating. A lot of people in America are frustrated, and what I tell your viewers is I'm frustrated. And I'm angry for all of us because we're paying way too much for health care. We got great health care, but we need to lower the cost. We need to get more physicians into the system. The federal government, puts a lot of money into universities. Well, if we're going to subsidize something, like, hey, let's subsidize people becoming nurses, becoming more having more doctors. So we need to increase the supply of medical professionals.
And do you feel like there's a lot of support for this?
I think so, but it's always a fight, Virginia. These problems haven't gotten solved for a long time. Your viewers are probably saying, hey, we've heard this before, and we're fighting for it, but we've got to win on these issues because there's so much discretionary income being lost through paying so much for health care. So that's I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I want to do everything I can to have a free market of health care and to take care of people, but we've got to get these prices down.
Yeah. So if you could just touch on what's something you see happening in Congress now that you're excited about, and maybe something that you want to help see change.
Well, I think the immigration has been at the forefront of where we're going to fund ICE and Homeland Security, and I think that needs to continue to deport. We have probably 30 million people here illegally in our country. We really don't know how many, and I think that goes to beginning putting Americans first. So I think we need to continue to do that, because what's happened with the illegal immigration is it's strained our education system. I mean, in some parts of this country, we have many children that are trying to be educated. They don't speak English. So imagine going to school in Texas. You send your kid there, and half the students don't speak English. That's not fair to them. It's not fair to anyone. The healthcare system, they've flooded emergency rooms because people, they don't have healthcare. So their doctor appointment is basically the ER, which that's not good. So, our welfare system, we have many Americans that need help, and then we have illegal immigrants, coming in. It's just nonsense. One of the things I plan on doing is introducing a bill that says anyone that receives public assistance has to be a United States citizen. So that's one thing I'm going to do immediately to try to, address that.
Now, if you win this primary, right, you move on, you're going to take on Marcy Kaptur. What do you think are some of the primary differences between you and Marcy?
Well, Marcy's been in Washington. She's a creature of Washington. She's been there for 43 years, and she doesn't hold the same values I did. She actually voted against prohibiting men from playing women's sports. Okay, I mean, that's just a radical position. She voted against the tax cut bill, so she wants to continue to tax people receiving Social Security benefits. So you paid your taxes into the Social Security system, and then when you get them back, she wants to tax you again. She wants waiters to be taxed on their tips. She wants people to be taxed on their overtime. She's never saw a regulation that she didn't want to put on businesses to, to choke them and make it harder for them to operate their business. So she has, her own party hasn't trusted her to give her a chairmanship in 43 years in Washington. So she hasn't really been successful, getting in a position of power where she can deliver for Northwest Ohio. I served 8 years in the state legislature. I was a chairman of 2 committees. We passed many laws to make a difference in people's lives. She's passed like 5 bills in 43 years. She just really hasn't been successful. And we deserve better. We deserve better in Northwest Ohio. And I believe I ultimately win this election, Aaron, in Virginia, because my values are aligned with Northwest Ohioans more than Marcy Kaptur's values are. And I think over time, people are seeing that more and more.
And if people want to help out with your campaign, get involved, how can that happen?
Well, I have a website, DerekMerrin.com. We'd love to have your volunteer hours, or if you'd like to donate, that would help us. We have a lot of momentum right now. We're going to finish the mission. We came a little short this last time, but I don't quit, Virginia. I'm not going to quit on Northwest Ohio. We're going to win this. We're going to bring Marcy Kaptur back home, and we're going to have a true conservative fighter in Washington for Northwest Ohio.
All right. And is there any closing comment or encouraging word you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, we can't get weary in well-doing. Okay, a lot of people get discouraged with government. They get frustrated, and I'm the same way. But I've chosen to fight. I've chosen to get involved. Freedom is not free. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, and we're going to fight to keep it. It's not easy, but we're fighting right now, and that's why I'm running, and I encourage everyone watching at home to vote in the Republican primary on May 5th, to get involved, to stay engaged. Just because you get discouraged with something at the national level, you disagree with something, don't allow that to discourage you. Stay involved, keep voting, keep being active.
And one last word then for our Christian believers, to encourage them to get out and vote, and why they should as believers.
Well, their values need to be reflected in government, and your values are only going to be reflected and represented when you elect people that believe like you do. And I'm a Christian. I'm a proud Christian. I don't run from that. We need to stand up for traditional values the majority of us believe on, and you're going to be represented by who you elect. So they have to stay involved.
Well, thank you so much. It was such an honor to have you here, and we wish you well on May 5th.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for being with us today.
Well, it was a pleasure to have Derek Merrin, who's running for the 9th District in the House of Representatives, and it was just a joy to have him here.
It was. I also want to remind people that we have a shortfall from that spring share-a-thon that we need to address. So if you'd like to help us out right now, now's the time to go to that website, WLMB.com. Make a donation online there to help support WLMB, the work we're doing here. We would appreciate it.
That's right. So help us out, and also be sure to vote on May 5th in the primaries.